Few cities in the history of the world have had the impact that classical Athens did. The city served as an incubator for major innovations in the realms of art, maths, philosophy, science, and architecture. By the 5th century BC, Athens had become a densely populated city centered on the Acropolis. Around 30,000 adult male citizens lived here, alongside women, children, resident foreigners, and enslaved people who together formed a population approaching 200,000. Athens was not ruled by kings or emperors. Its government rested on assemblies, councils, and law courts where citizens were expected to speak, listen, and decide. This is Athens. Long before marble temples and democratic assemblies, Athens begins as a small Mycenaean settlement beneath the Acropolis, around 1400 BC. After the Bronze Age collapse, the city declines, survives, and slowly rebuilds. Athens would pursue small-scale farming, renewed trade, and pottery production. Its poor soil limited grain harvests, pushing the city toward olive cultivation and craftsmanship rather than agricultural surplus. By the 8th century BC, Athens was no longer merely surviving. It was stabilizing and expanding. Population increased across the region of Attica, villages coalesced, and land was reclaimed for farming. Pottery production surged, with the canonical geometric style being introduced and traded across the Aegean. Roughly 350 years later, in 447 BC, Athens would solidify herself as a cultural landmark by starting the construction of the Parthenon, one of the most significant buildings in the world. Athens would construct many significant structures at her peak, including the port of Piraeus, the most advanced harbour system in the ancient Greek world. By this point, the city imported the majority of its food. Tens of thousands of tons of grain arrived annually, especially from the Black Sea region, modern Ukraine and southern Russia, along with Egypt and Sicily. Without this maritime supply, Athens could not survive. Alongside grain came timber for shipbuilding from Macedonia and Thrace, iron, copper, and luxury goods from across the Aegean Sea. Olive oil and silver flowed outward in return. This maritime economy was inseparable from the military power of Athens, and so the city maintained a fleet of roughly 200 triremes at its height, protecting trade routes and enforcing tribute. The trireme was the backbone of Athenian power, a fast, lightly built warship designed for speed and precision rather than endurance. In battle, triremes aimed to shear enemy oars or strike hulls with a bronze ram. Naval victory depended less on brute force than on timing. Of course, this harbour system could not be left exposed. Athens protected it with the long walls, a set of 6-kilometre parallel walls linking Piraeus directly to the city and safeguarding ships, supplies, and movement during war. The walls allowed Athens to abandon its countryside and withdraw behind stone. Food, timber, and men continued to arrive by sea even as enemy armies ravaged Attica. This strategy reshaped warfare, turning sieges into contests of endurance rather than territory. During the Peloponnesian War, Pericles ordered the population to shelter within them as Spartan armies burned Attica. Grain still arrived by sea, but crowding and disease followed, turning their very protection into a weapon against themselves. Though the most radical experiment was not architectural or military, but political, by the early 5th century BC, the city had developed a system where power rested not with kings or nobles, but with its citizens. Roughly 30,000 adult male Athenians qualified as citizens and thus had civil rights. And any one of them could speak and vote in the ecclesia, or the assembly, which met around 40 times a year on the Pnyx Hill. Attendance often reached 6,000, the quorum needed for major decisions. Meanwhile, day-to-day governance was handled by the Boule, a council of 500 citizens chosen by lot each year. Selection by lottery was used because it reduced elite control and treated political participation as a civic obligation, not a career. Law courts were even larger. Juries could number 200, 500, sometimes more than 1,000. And there were no judges in the modern sense. Instead, citizens judged citizens. and verdicts were final. To make participation possible, Athens paid citizens for public service, a small wage, but revolutionary for its time. Politics in Athens was noisy, imperfect, and deeply human, yet it created an unprecedented system where ordinary men governed a major Mediterranean power. The same citizens who debated laws by day gathered in theatres by night. Art was simply another arena of public life. During festivals like the city Dionysia, as many as 15,000 Athenians gathered in the open-air theatre of Dionysus to watch new plays performed in competition. Theatre became a public tool for examining power and society. Tragedy, shaped by Sophocles, explored moral choice. Comedy, led by Aristophanes, openly mocked politics. Both traditions, born here in Athens, still shape drama today. For Athenians, the gods were not distant figures, but active forces in daily life. Athena, the city's patron, was believed to protect Athens through wisdom, foresight, and strategy rather than brute force. Her sanctuary crowned the Acropolis, where the Parthenon and surrounding temples formed the religious and symbolic heart of the city. Temples were not congregational spaces, but houses for the gods themselves. Sacrifices of animals, wine, and grain were performed outdoors, where smoke carried prayers skyward. And omens mattered, with bird flight, dreams, and oracles guiding decisions in war, politics, and personal life. Military service was tied to citizenship, and most adult male Athenians were expected to fight when called upon. Men would train from youth to fight in formation, learning discipline, endurance, and obedience rather than individual combat skill. On land, the backbone of Athenian forces was the hoplite. These citizen soldiers supplied their own equipment, including a large round shield, spear, and helmet, and fought in tightly packed phalanx formations. Armor would vary, with wealthier citizens affording the famous bronze muscle cuirass, while the more typical chest piece was the linothorax, or breastplate of linen. Before battle, hoplites prepared their own equipment. Bronze helmets were repaired, shield straps checked, spear shafts straightened, and armor adjusted to fit the body precisely. Success depended less on individual strength than on discipline and maintaining the phalanx formation under pressure. Guards and sentries protected gates, roads, and public buildings, watching for threats and maintaining order during mobilization and siege. As previously seen, the Athenian navy was the largest of any other Greek city of the time, with roughly 200 triremes at her peak. Military strategy would largely rest on this naval superiority, coupled with the strategic use of fortifications like the long walls. Before campaigns, generals consulted seers, examined animal sacrifices, interpreted birds, and delayed action if omens were unfavorable. For much of the 5th century BC, Athens dominated the Mediterranean as one of the most sophisticated war machines. Classical Athens produced many significant people across a range of domains, with arguably the most significant being Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Together, the three philosophers would transform how we reason about knowledge, ethics, politics, and the nature of reality itself. Here we see Plato and Aristotle having a discussion at Plato's Academy. And this reconstruction was based on Raphael's famous School of Athens painting. Playwrights like Sophocles and Aristophanes defined tragedy and old comedy, shaping drama around moral conflict and using satire to critique society and politics. Significant writers such as Thucydides, Herodotus, and Xenophon would record history and set many standards for the practice. The collapse of classical Athens began with defeat in the Peloponnesian War. In 404 BC, after nearly 30 years of conflict, the city surrendered to Sparta, exhausted in manpower and resources. Athens lost its empire, its fleet, and the long walls that had once secured its survival. As those walls were dismantled, the symbols of Athenian power disappeared in full view of the population. Democracy was briefly replaced by an oligarchic regime known as the 30 Tyrants. Although democracy was restored within a year, the city that emerged was permanently changed. Athens no longer dominated the Greek world, but it remained a center of thought and education. Philosophers continued to teach, and institutions like Plato's Academy carried Athenian ideas far beyond the city itself. In 86 BC, Athens was sacked by Rome and absorbed into the Roman world. This marks the end of Athens as a political force, but is the beginning of its legacy. Athens rose as a small city and became a center of power, culture, and debate. Its institutions were tested by war, defeat, and internal strain. The city lost its empire and eventually its independence. But the ideas shaped in Athens still frame how we think about politics, justice, art, and knowledge today. Those ideas continue to circulate, adapt, and persist. In that sense, Athens endures not as a moment in history, but as an ongoing influence. This was Classical Athens. I'm Johannes, thank you for joining me.